All right, so we are ready for our last math function, multiplication, when it comes to fractions. This video should be a little shorter, and hopefully the process will be a little easier. I find that with adding and subtracting, there's just definitely more steps to it, and sometimes it takes longer to get to the final answer. Where multiplying, it's really a lot easier. If you will have your calculator, it'll make these bigger answers easier to get to. Also, I want to let you know that as I was doing this, I realized that our book really doesn't teach cross reducing, which is part of multiplying fractions. So I'm going to do one more part outside the book, and that'll be tomorrow. So kind of shifting my math lessons by one day, because I really think that if we can get the grasp of cross reducing, then our life's going to be a lot easier as we move forward this year. So be patient with me. I know there's some of you who want to just get back into the book and work ahead, but we really need this strong foundation so that we can be successful mathematicians throughout this year. So as always, please follow along, fill out your notes as we go through these. So your goal for today is just be able to say that I know that I can multiply fractions and then change them into their simplest form. So when I ask myself my fraction questions, then I know I'm dealing with multiplication. I'm going to simply ask, can I multiply fractions? And that answer is yes. Now, where we had adding and subtracting, we have other steps we had to get to before I did the math. I'm just the opposite in multiplication. I'm going to start with just multiplying across. Now, notice on your notes, it just says multiply across. Please add those arrows because those arrows help me realize what I'm connecting when I'm multiplying. When I get in tomorrow's lesson, especially when it comes to cross reducing, you'll see the importance of those arrows. But it reminds me that I have to multiply my numerators and then I have to multiply my denominators to get my answer. Once I've done my math, then I'm going to simplify and convert once again, if I can. So simplifying means I'm going to reduce. So I'm going to use my divisibility rules. I'm going to divide top and bottom by the same numbers to get it to the smallest form. And then converting, if it's top heavy like that convertible, I'm going to take that top off. So I'm going to do the division, which fractions are division, and I'm going to change it into a mixed number. All right, so as we work through these, just make sure that you're showing your work. Now, I'm going to talk kind of fast as I go through and I explain. I need you to listen and follow along. However, when I'm going fast and you can't keep up with showing your work, then all you have to do is pause it. Once again, the nice thing about having videos for you to follow, it's me teaching, explaining the way I would teach you in person, but I don't have to go as slow to make sure that everyone has everything written down, especially when there are so many of you. It's hard to keep track to make sure that I'm going at the right pace for everyone. Some of you are going to be able to keep up at the speed that I'm talking, and some of you just need to pause it, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. The videos are here for you to go back to, watch, rewatch, watch with your parents, whatever helps you be successful as a mathematician. Let's get into the practice problems. So on question one, then I have multiplication of fractions. And once again, I know I can multiply fractions, so I'm simply going to do the math. I'm going to multiply across. So multiplying across tells me to multiply my numerators. I have 6 times 3, which is 18. Then I have to multiply my denominators. 6 times 12. Well, I don't expect you to know off the top of your head that's 96, but if you pick up your calculator, you can do 8 times 12 and get 96. They're both even, right? So going back into our reference packet, I believe it's page 9 where your divisibility rules are, then I know anything that's even, it ends with a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8, then 2 will go into it. So as I'm reducing then, I'm going to simplify by reducing by 2's. 2 will go into 18 9 times, and 2 will go into 96 48 times. Now another one that's on that list that we haven't spent a lot of time with. We've done a lot of 2's, 5's, and 0's, but we also need to make sure that we check our 3's. 3's, the rules for 3's is if I add the digits, will 3 then go into that answer or that sum evenly? Well, 9 plus nothing is 9, but 3 will go into it. But 8 times 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 3 will go into 12 evenly. So what that tells me with my divisibility rule is I can also reduce by 3's. And if you didn't know that, well, then you could just say, well, I don't know if 3 will go into it or not, and type it into my calculator, 48 divided by 3, and I'll find out indeed it does. So I'm going to simplify. I'm going to reduce, divide top and bottom by a 3, and make it into its simplest form. 3 goes into 9 3 times, and 3 goes into 48 16 times. 3 is a prime number. It doesn't go into 16 evenly, and 6 plus 1 is 7, so I know 3 won't go into it evenly. So my final answer is just 3/16. All right, so we're going to follow the same steps every time. We're going to multiply across, and then if I can convert or if I can simplify, then I'm going to do it. I can multiply on number 2, so I'm going to multiply across. 1 times 4 is 4, 2 times 5 is 10. Both even. So I look at my divisibility rules. 2 will go into both of them, so I'm going to simplify. 2 will go into 4 2 times, and 2 will go into 10 5 times. They're both prime numbers, and 2 won't go into 5 evenly, so I know that 2/5 is going to be my final answer. Now, number 3, we're going to multiply across. 2 times 7 gives me 14. 4 times 8 gives me 32. Both even numbers. So once again, I'm going to reduce by 2's. Have to simplify, have to make it into its simplest form. 2 will go into 14 7 times, and 2 will go into 32 16 times. 7's a prime number, and 7 won't go into 16 evenly, so 16 is my final answer. Now, number 4, it's one of the reasons why I'm going to do another video for tomorrow's lesson on cross reducing, but we're simply going to start with today's lesson. Following steps, we're going to multiply straight across numerator and denominator. So we're going to do the math. We're going to multiply 2 and 7. That gives us 14. And 7 times 9 gives me 63. Now, when I go through my divisibility rules, then it can't be reduced, right? They're not even. They don't end with 5 and 0, and they don't end with 0. When I add 4 plus 1, that's 5, and 3 doesn't go into it. So I might think, well, nothing will go into it. But that's not the case. If I go back and I look at the actual problem itself, notice that in the numerator and denominator, I have a 7. If I have a numerator and a denominator in the 7, then that tells me I can reduce by 7's. And 7 will go into 14 evenly 2 times. And 7 will go into 63 evenly 9 times. Notice that when I take out the 7's, I'm left with in my numerators a 2 and in my denominators a 9. So really that was the only math I had to do. Well, that's why we're going to do a lesson on cross reducing tomorrow, to make our lives just a little bit easier, hopefully, when we do the math. But 2/9 should be my final answer once I reduce. All right, so I'm going to guide you through 5 and 6, and then I want you to pause and try 7 and 8 on your own, and then check your work to make sure you are good to go before we go into the second half of this lesson. So on 5 and 6, once again, we know we have multiplication. I'm simply going to multiply across. So I'm going to multiply across, and 4 times 1 gives me a numerator of 4, and 10 times 6 gives me a denominator of 60. They're both even, so I know I have to simplify, right? So I'm going to reduce top and bottom by 2's, since they're both even, and 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 2 goes into 60 30 times. But they're still even again, so I have to reduce again. Once again, simplify means to take it into its simplest form as low as I can go. So I'm going to reduce by 2's, and 2 will go into 2 once, and 2 will go into 30 15 times. Had a second thought there. So if you wanted to reduce by 4's, then you absolutely could and do it in one step, because 4 would go into 4 one time, and 4 goes into 60 15 times. My final answer, either way though, is going to give me 1/15, and I'm good to go. So on number 6, we multiply across. My numerators, 2 times 1 is 2, and my denominators, 5 times 4 is 20. Once again, even numbers, so I have to reduce. When I simplify, going down to my simplest form, if I can do it in one step, I will, and if I can't, then I do it in multiple steps, and that's okay. In this one, I just have to do it in one step because 2 is as low as I can go. 2 will go into 2 one time, and 2 will go into 20 10 times. So my final answer is 1/10. All right, so I want you to try 7 and 8, pause the video, and then check your work. You can either do 7 and check, and then 8 and check, or do them both together and come back to me. So hopefully you've done that. You have 2 answers. You have 7 and 8 that you have solved. You told yourself, well, I know I can multiply, so I'm just going to do the math. I'm going to multiply across. So I did 2 times 3 gave me 6, and 3 times 10, which is 30. Now, you could have seen that 6 will go into both of them, or you just simply said, well, they're both even, so I'm going to reduce by 2's. And when I do that, then I have 2 goes into 6 3 times, and 2 goes into 30 15 times. But then I have to be able to see that 3 will go into both of those, because 5 plus 1 is 6. 3 does go into 6 evenly, so I have to reduce by 3's. When I reduce by 3's, then 3 goes into 3 once, and 3 goes into 15 5 times. That's simplifying. It's in my simplest form. So 1/5 should have been your final answer that you got to. If you reduced by 6's and you did it in one step, you just had 6 divided by 6 is 1, and 30 divided by 6 is 5, you still got to the same answer of 1/5. Number 8, then you just once again multiplied across. 8 times 4 gave you 32, and 10 times 7 gave you 70. They are both even, so you reduce by 2's, and 2 will go into 32 16 times, and 2 will go into 70 35 times. 2 won't work because they're not both even. 35 ends with a 5, but 16 doesn't. 3's, 6 plus 1 is 7, so 3's doesn't work. The only factor of 16 is 4, and 4 doesn't go into 35 evenly, so I know that's as low as I could have gone. So hopefully you got 16 35ths, and you've got all this under control. So once again, anytime you're struggling, please ask me so I can help you. Now, here's some extra information that we need to write down. So there was a box left on the first page of notes that we're now going to be filling in with some information. All right. I cannot use mixed numbers and I cannot use whole numbers in these math problems. All right. So inside of the box on that first page, I want you to put, I just cannot use mixed numbers and whole numbers. All right. The box was left there for you to fill that in. So pause that, write it down, and then we'll continue on so we can see what that means. As I'm doing these math processes then, I have steps that I need to follow in order to convert a mixed number into an improper fraction, right? So we use the same term. If I had an improper fraction, right, it was top heavy, we converted it into a mixed number. We changed it. Well, now I'm going to be converting the mixed numbers into an improper fraction because I can't use mixed numbers in my math problems. So the lines are for the steps for you to fill out so you know exactly how to do that. So the steps are this. We're going to go clockwise. We're going to start at the bottom. We're going to multiply. Then we're going to add. So what that means is when you look at the fraction or the mixed number that I've given you, 3 and 2/8, I'm going to go clockwise, right? So clockwise, just the way the second hand works. But I'm going to start at the bottom. Where I have the 8, I'm going to start with multiplying. So if I'm going clockwise, I start at the bottom and I'm going to multiply. Then I put a little multiplication sign there and an arrow because that's telling me I have a math problem to do. 8 times 3. Well, 8 times 3 is 24. This is where you can use your calculator if you're not sure of your multiplication facts. But then I have to add. So I keep that 24 and I'm going to add still going clockwise. So 24 plus 2 now. Notice I put another arrow. So 24 plus 2, that's going to give me my new numerator. So 8 times 3 is 24 plus 2 is 26. My bottom line there for my steps is I'm simply going to keep my denominator. Notice I put a box around the 8. If I'm going to slide that over, I know that my 8 is going to stay the same. So if I have the improper fraction of 26 over 8, if I wanted to convert that into a mixed number and I divided it, you're going to get 3 and 2/8. However, I can't use 3 and 2/8 in my multiplication problems. So I just have to change it to where it is an improper fraction. Let's do the same thing on 1 and 4/12 so we get the hang of it before we get into the math problems. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to multiply going clockwise. So 12 times 1 is 12. And then I'm going to add. So 12 plus 4 gives me 16. So my numerator is 16. Then it says to keep my denominator. So I know my 12 is going to be my denominator. So 1 and 4/12 is the same as saying 16 over 12. I have to change any mixed number that I have in these math problems before I can do the math. All right, so let's look at the next one. So I have 3 and 2/8. I can't use that, right? So if I can't use that, I have to change 3 and 2/8 into an improper fraction. I start at the bottom. I start at the 8. I'm going to start going clockwise. I'm going to multiply. So 8 times 3, well, 8 times 3 gives me 24. And then I'm going to add. So start at the bottom, multiply, then add. So 8 times 3 is 24, plus 2 is 26. And then I keep my denominator of the 8. Now I just bring everything else down so that I have a math problem that I can do. Once I have the correct math problem or in the correct form that I can do, I simply go back to my original steps. I'm going to multiply across 26 times 9. 26 times 9 is 234. I don't know that automatically off the top of my head. I do it on my handy dandy calculator. 8 times 10 is 80. But now I have to simplify and convert if I can. So if I simplify first, then I know they're both even and 2 will go into both of them. So 2, if I don't know it off the top of my head, which most of us don't, we pick up our calculator, we divide 234 by 2. Once again, 234 gets typed in first, and then I get a numerator of 117. 80 divided by 2 should be rather easy. That's 40. I don't see anything else that will go into both of them, so now I'm just going to convert it. Now I'm going to do the division because fractions are division. And once again, my top number always goes inside my division box. So I have 117 divided by 40. 40 won't go into 1, 40 won't go into 11, but 40 will go into 117. Well, how many even times? I pick up my calculator, 117 divided by 40 equals, and I see that it's 2 point stuff. I get rid of the stuff. I don't care about it. I just need the 2. And that, therefore, I know that 2 times 40 is 80. And when I subtract those, I have a remainder of 37. So now I'm going to write my mixed number as my answer. My remainder, once again, is always my numerator of my fraction. And my divisor, what I'm dividing by, is always my denominator of my fraction. So my final answer should be 2 and 37/40. Okay? So it's just going that extra step to make sure that I have fractions in my math problem before I try to do the work. So on question 2, I see that I have 1 1/3. I know I can't use that in my math problem. I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to go clockwise. I'm going to multiply, add, and keep my denominator. So I start at the 3. 3 times 1 is 3. And then I add 1 to it, which is 4. So I know my numerator is 4. And I'm going to keep that denominator of 3 in my fraction. Ignore the box, it's off a little bit. Then I bring everything else down. So I have times 3/8. Now I have multiplication of fractions. Can I multiply fractions? Absolutely. I'm going to multiply across. 4 times 3 gives me 12, and 3 times 8 gives me 24. So I can reduce by 2's. If I reduce by 2's, then 2 goes into 12 6 times, and 2 goes into 24 12 times. Then I can reduce by 2's again. So 2 will go into 6 3 times, and 2 will go into 12 6 times. But then I can reduce by 3's. So if I reduce by 3's, then I have 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now I get to my final answer of 1/2. Right? But some of you are like, well, I saw it a different way, and it's okay to see it in a different way. You can simplify, you can reduce in one step. If you see that 12 will go into 12 and 24, reduce by 12s. There's nothing wrong with that because 12 goes into 12 one time and 12 goes into 24 two times. Notice we still get the same answer. All right, so question 3 is going to introduce us into another step, right? Now we see 2 and 4/10, and I know I can't use that, so we're going to change that up. We're going to convert it into an improper fraction. So once again, I start at the bottom, 10 times 2. Well, 10 times 2 is 20, plus the numerator of 4. 20 plus 4 is 24. So I have a numerator of 24. I keep my denominator of 10. However, I've got a whole number there, right? So that number or that note that we added into the box on that very first page says that I can't use mixed numbers or whole numbers in my math problem. So don't make these complicated. Just remember that I have to put my 3 or my whole number over 1. That's all I do. Where some people make a mistake is they put 1 over the 3, and that changes the value, because 3 over 1 is still equal to the value of 3. If I put it as 1 over 3, then I've gone from having 3 whole pizzas to 1/3 of a pizza, and that's not fun. All right, so just simply put my whole number over 1 each and every time, and then I can do the math. So now I'm going to multiply across. 24 times 3 on my calculator tells me that's 72, and 10 times 1 is 10. I can see that they're both even, so I'm going to simplify. So I'm going to reduce by 2's. 2 will go into 72 36 times, and 2 will go into 10 5 times. Now 5 won't go into 36 evenly because it doesn't end with a 5 or a 0, and 5 is a prime number. However, I am still top heavy. So now I'm going to convert it, once again, back into the mixed number. So my top number, once again, goes inside my division box. My denominator is outside my box. 5 won't go into 3, but it will go into 36 7 times. Because 7 times 5 is 35, so I have a remainder of 1. Once again, my remainder becomes my numerator. My divisor is my denominator. So now I find out that my final answer is simply 7 1/5. Right? So then on number 4, I want you to try it and then come back to me and see how you did. All right, so let's see how you did on your own. So when you first started this math problem, hopefully you looked at it and you're like, oh, I remember I can't use a whole number, right? 4 can't be used in this math problem. So the easy way to do it is simply by putting it over 1. All right, so then you look at 1 2/4. Well, then you have to go through the process. So hopefully you followed the process. You started at the 4 and you went clockwise and you said, well, 4 times 1 is 4. And then 4 plus 2 is 6. And then you kept your denominator, right? So that's 4. Okay, easy enough. Now you have had your multiplication problem. You multiplied across. So 4 times 6 gave you 24, and 1 times 4 gave you 4. But now I need to simplify, right? I have to reduce to my lowest terms. So we reduce by 2 since they're both even, and 2 will go into 24 12 times, and 2 will go into 4 2 times. But you had to reduce by 2's again. And 2 goes into 12 6 times, and 2 goes into 2 1 time. The other way you could have done it is you could have started with your 24 fourths and said, well, I know 4 will go into both of them, so I'm just going to reduce by 4s and done it in one step. Once again, that's fine. It is a great way to do it, but it's not a required way of doing it. 4 will go into 24 6 times, and 4 will go into 4 1 time, and we still end up with 6 over 1. Now, I can't write 6 over 1 as my answer. The reason being is if I think about how I started, when we said that if I have a whole number in my math problem, I can't keep it in my math problem. I have to put it over 1 because 4 over 1 is the same as having a value of 4. But when I'm writing it as an answer, if I can't use it in a whole number form in the math problem, but I have to realize that I have to put it in my whole number form in my answer. So I'm going to remove that 1, and it doesn't change the value at all. 6 over 1 is the exact same thing as just simply saying 6. So 6 would be your final answer. All right, so it's a shorter video, and hopefully it's not a complicated video. Hopefully you remember a lot of these steps from last year, but taking good notes and looking at these notes while you're doing your assignment should make it much easier. Today will be your last chance to do extra credit for the report card that's coming out this Friday. But if you have any questions, please let me know, ask questions, and review this video as many times as you need to.